Alrighty, hello guys. This is gonna be our last section for chapter 10. So, let's see. Today is Thursday, so we're gonna finish chapter 10 today. I'm gonna give you plenty of time to review so that you can ask questions as you need to and do what you need to try to get ready. So we'll definitely take at least Friday and Monday to give you time to just review and practice and make sure you're ready for the test. So plan on a chapter 10 test being Tuesday of next week, and maybe we'll move it back to Wednesday if I feel like we need some more time. But so be ready for that. There's gonna be plenty of time to review chapter 10, ask questions, and then have a test next Tuesday or Wednesday. So anyhow, this is our last section. The last thing we need to talk about for chapter 10, and it is on cofunctions. You'll remember all of your trig function values that you already know. Specifically, if we were to talk about the sine of 30, you all would be able to tell me that the sine of 30 is 1/2, right? And if you think about your chart and move to another spot where you see 1/2, there's another function value that equals 1/2. That would be cosine of 60. And we've talked a little bit about this. I mentioned it once or twice as we were developing our knowledge of these function values, that sine and cosine, sine of 30 is equal to cosine of 60. We also saw sine of 45 is equal to cosine of 45. Sine of 0 is equal to cosine of 90. And in all these cases, sine and cosine were equal when you evaluated two different angles that added to 90. And that's what we're talking about today when we talk about cofunctions, is if we take sine and cosine of two angles that add to 90, those function values will be equal. In other words, sine and cosine of complementary angles will always be equal. Sine and cosine of complementary angles will always be equal. And that's the whole gist of today's lesson. That's really all there is. That's it. Sine and cosine of complementary angles will always be equal. And there's two other pairs of cofunctions we'll talk about. Okay, so let's think about that. How can we state that formally? Oh dear. We have sine of an angle is always equal to cosine of its complement. The complement of 90, or excuse me, the complement of theta would be 90 minus theta, right? Two angles are complementary if they add to 90. So if we had theta plus 90 minus theta, the thetas would cancel and we'd be left with 90. So the complement of theta is 90 minus theta. And we could say in general that sine of theta is equal to cosine of 90 minus theta. This is our first pair of cofunctions. We call them cofunctions because when you evaluate them on complementary angles, they end up being equal to each other. You'll notice, what's the difference between the words sine and cosine? Right. The prefix co. The word is identical minus the word co, the prefix co. This is why it's called the cosine function, or it's related to why we call it the cosine function. They are co-functions of each other. Sine is equal to the cosine of its complement, or sine of an angle is equal to the cosine of its complement. Okay, which makes it really easy for us to deduce what the next two pairs of co-functions will be. For example, secant of an angle, what would secant's co-function be? Well, it would be cosecant, which means secant of an angle is equal to cosecant of that angle's complement, right? Secant and cosecant, right? The difference being co. So secant and cosecant are cofunctions. And then the last pair, hopefully, is obvious at this point. Tangent and cotangent would be the last pair of cofunctions, right? Tangent and cotangent. Okay, so we have three pairs of cofunctions that hold this relationship, right? These are our pairs of cofunctions. All we mean by cofunctions is that the sine of an angle is equal to the cosine of its complement, or secant of an angle is equal to cosecant of its complement. Tangent of an angle is equal to cotangent of its complement. Right? That's what cofunctions means. So in the next video, we're going to start looking at some problems where we can apply these cofunctions and how we actually use them to figure out different function values and rewrite functions in terms of smaller angles, etc. So that's coming up in the next video.